Another lesson that has sort of been very rooted in the family values is whatever you do it 100%, right? And grandfather went through so much, and I feel like it was his love of music that made everything meaningful for him. When I got into SaPa and I started feeling the vision for what it could be, it became a really, really important part of my life. We wanted to make music that was like that, right? Comfort music that resonates with people and makes them feel warm inside. And it's been something that Ambi, Mahesh, Akshay and I have been doing since 2018. And this is a great example of me working with people that I really like.
From global stages with orchestras to classrooms filled with curious young minds, Suri's guest embodies the rhythm of purpose. Bindu Subramaniam is a singer, songwriter, educator, and entrepreneur, redefining how India lives music. As the Dean of the Subramaniam Academy of Performing Arts, she's building bridges between tradition and innovation, between play and pedagogy. From the Oslo Philharmonic at age 12 to transforming classrooms through music, Bindu proves that melody isn't just heard, it's lived.
Today, I'm joined by someone really special, Bindu Subramaniam. Let's dive into the sound, soul, and story of Bindu Subramaniam. Thank you for coming to Expressions, Bindu. I'm really excited to chat with you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. You started playing really young, when you were at a young age, I think 12. So, what do you recall of those days?
Well, I think growing up in a family of musicians, there isn't really an idea of when you start music or when you start learning, but it's just sort of an everyday part of life. Like other kids have Barbies and stuff, we all had like mini violins and pianos, and so that was the environment which my siblings and I grew up in, and I think the environment which we've sort of given our kids as well. So I was always a fan of music and writing songs, and I remember writing absolute trash as music when I was probably 6 or 7, and with all the seriousness of a real professional musician, I took a tape recorder and I recorded my song and I wrote down the lyrics and kind of put together the produced cassette. And so I just remember understanding that music is a very big part of everything, but I never really thought of it as a job. And my first performance with a full symphony orchestra of like 70, 80 musicians and a choir was when I was 12. And I think being in Oslo at that moment, right? You're in a foreign country, you're with a whole bunch of very professional musicians who are in like their black suits, and it's all gorgeous and it's choreographed and it's pin drop silence, and then you're standing there in front of everybody. I think that really hit me, and I'm like, oh wow, am I out of my depth now? And I think I was terrified, right? Like, I mean, you're so scared.
Yeah.
But it was also beautiful because when you're performing with such a large number of musicians and everything is rehearsed and it's an orchestra and everyone's playing their part, it's such a really good example of how the sum is greater than the parts. And when everyone is playing together and when everyone's doing what they're supposed to do, it's really magical and addictive.
Yes. And you said you started at 12, so you must have learned a lot in your journey.
Yeah, where do I start with what I learned? I feel like I'm a work in progress, so I'm learning every day. And I look at how I've evolved since I've started. And I think I've gone from being very nervous to being someone with incredible imposter syndrome to being somebody with a little less imposter syndrome. So, and when I look at how art evolves, I think it's really great to be in a position to sort of be able to write what I feel like openly and to sort of not really worry about judgment anymore.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important part of human evolution, right?
Yeah. And also growing up in a household with, with music background and your father being a music icon.
Yeah.
Was pursuing law an act of rebellion or something?
Well, I remember from the time I was really young wanting to be a lawyer. And I think that I read too many John Grisham novels, and I think maybe I watched too much Perry Mason or Matlock or whatever was on TV in the olden days. And it just seemed like such an exciting thing to do, to carry this briefcase and to wear this suit and to be allowed to talk, right? Like talking is my passion. Like to be that person who's allowed to talk. So I took it to such a point that I remember being a lawyer for Halloween once, and I was very sure I wanted to do it. It was also something that my parents supported because my dad is not just a musician. He also has a medical degree. So I mean, the home environment that my parents created was you should have some sort of academic training as well. And my mother was brilliant, right? She had studied French. She could speak multiple languages. She did a master's in music. She had her banker's license. She had her real estate license. So in that environment,
Yeah.
I think academics was never an act of rebellion, but
Yeah.
more something that was expected.
Yeah, now it makes sense. So your music also blends Indian roots and Western grooves. So when you first told your dad about mixing Carnatic music with pop, what was his reaction?
So I mean, I don't know if this is really public knowledge, but my parents met while touring for George Harrison and Ravi Shankar. So I mean,
Oh,
that's the backdrop of classical and fusion music in front of which they met. So I mean, both of them were always very open-minded about music, very experimental. My dad, in the 70s coined the term global music and global fusion because he felt that we have this tendency to classify things as, Western and world, right? So when you're looking at geography, you look at the entire world together. When you're looking at history, you kind of look at world history. But when you look at music, you have this tendency to say that, okay, this is Western classical music and everything else is world or
yeah,
ethnic or other. So
sure.
I mean, this idea of being open-minded and experimental is very much something that he's been supported of because he's been a pioneer. I mean, to the point that when I tried to rebel as a 15, 16, 17-year-old, and I was like, no, I'm really into heavy metal. I'm really into, okay, now my heavy metal phase is over. I'm really into jazz, and I'm going to be listening to, this person and Ella Fitzgerald, and then I go to like the top floor of his house and he has all these record collections of, these jazz legends. And he's played with many of them. And it was so disappointing. I had to find a different way to rebel. I got a tattoo. So, I mean, hopefully that counts as rebellion.
Okay. What does your dad to say?
Oh, this tattoo I got a few years ago. And
Very unusual.
it's meant to symbolize my resilience is greater than my highs and lows, right? When you see the semicolon, you think about pause and mental health and things like that. And so this is kind of a message for me
Okay.
that, my resilience is greater than my highs and lows because I think all of us are sometimes at a point where we need to be reminded of that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. And what did your debut solo album mean to you back then?
Well, I think in a way, I was really trying to find myself. I'm still trying to find myself or find more dimensions of myself. So when I had an opportunity after I had finished a master's of songwriting and music business at Berkeley, I had this opportunity to put together my album, and many of the songs are sort of things that had been written as homework or inspired from people around me. And one song that the title track of the album was actually called Superstar. And
That is quite nice.
now when I look at it, it feels like a lifetime ago because it's really about how, this is sort of cliched, how fame is not real and, and all of that kind of stuff. And there's another song called Surrender where I collaborated with my dad and I had friends write some songs for me. So I felt like that was in some sense a coming of age project for me. The one and done pop album for me. And everything else after that has sort of been more exploratory in terms of uh, you know, world music, contemporary world music, or pop with Indian classical music and things like that. So I feel like I had to do that and I had to make that.
Yeah.
And then I've maybe evolved a little past that as well.
Lovely, lovely. I want to know more about your music, your writing,
Yeah.
where you get the inspiration from, but we'll come to that later. I also really admire your devotion and pride in music. Where do you think that comes from?
I feel like I'll get repetitive if I keep saying that everything comes from my parents. So I'm going to say that it comes from my grandparents now. I think like another lesson that has sort of been very rooted in the family values is whatever you do it 100%, right? And this idea of hard work and this dedication to music is like, when people ask me sometimes, I say I'm a third generation music teacher, right? Because my grandfather went through so much, and I feel like it was his love of music that made everything meaningful for him.
Yeah.
He started learning music as a child, and he started performing, and he wanted to kind of make music his career. But then his mother died, right? And then they moved to another city, and then his father left them. And so he was kind of taking care of five of his younger siblings and making sure that they were okay and that everything was great for them. And then so he sort of sacrificed this idea of his music career so that he could teach them music and make sure that they came up, and he would continue teaching music, but he also took other jobs, right? And then he had an opportunity to go to Sri Lanka, and he did a lot of amazing work there where he worked with Radio Ceylon. He set up a Carnatic music department. And then riots happened and he had to flee there as a refugee. So, I mean, the entire story of his life is very much devotion to music no matter what. So when I see how much has gone into preserving and propagating music, I feel like this is a matter of great pride for all of us.
And do you practice singing every day, like riyaz and?
I do. I love singing because it grounds me. I mean, it's probably not the really structured practice that I should be doing. So if any of my students are listening to this, just sort of disregard this bit. But music is something that I use for centering as well, right? It brings me joy. It's my little therapy.
Yeah. No, and I've also read some way that it helps in breathing and
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. A lot of breathing.
positive.
Yeah, and I mean, and a lot of the stuff that initially looks like it's hand wavy and sort of out there. If we start digging deeper and we look at scientific,
Yeah.
meaning, a lot of this like humming stimulates the vagal nerve, right? So that's used for calming, it's used for centering, it's used for this. So I mean, there is a lot of science around sound and breathing and stuff, which shows how music in any form can really be meaningful to your everyday life.
Absolutely. I want to talk about your brother now. So
Yeah.
between you and Ambi, whom I'm told is a perfectionist, who hits the record first?
Yeah, I think Ambi and I kind of balance each other out well because he's very structured and he's like he wants things just so.
Yeah.
And I'm very much the ADHD, absent-minded, let's do it yesterday, or even better, let's change everything. So I'm always like, at some point, I feel like every day I would call him in the morning and I'd be like, here's my idea for the day. Let's do this. And he'd be like, okay, great. But can we also finish what we were supposed to do yesterday? So I think it works well like that. And I think our brother Narayana, who's a surgeon, is sort of a mix of both of that, where he's got both those voices in his own head.
So has there been any dramatic artist moment between the two of you?
I think it's been more like gradual in the sense that whenever you work with family over a period of time, you have to acknowledge that your roles may change and that your relationship may evolve as well. So we've gone from being siblings and I wouldn't say we fought too much as kids because we had that buffer of a brilliant brother in the middle, but gone from being that to sort of being co-workers and respecting each other, and also sort of realizing what each of us is good at, right? We have our own skill sets, and for me, if it's so he won't write lyrics, right? Or if there's a violin line, there's no way I'm going to give him advice on how he needs to do that. So I think playing to each other's skill sets, and one thing that we've really found that helps de-escalate potential conflict is you see who wants it more, right? Like sometimes if there's a decision to be made and you feel really strongly about it, then you speak up and you say, look, this is important to me. And if it's not, then it's okay. So I mean, I don't always feel as strongly about things as he does, and we may have different opinions, but if it's something that he feels more strongly about, then I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
You feel it, let's go for it. And then you back each other.
And SaPa was started in 2007 by your father. and Kavita Krishnamurthy Subramaniam. So how did you become a part of it?
I think I was always floating around there somewhere. I mean, like every project is a family project. Again, when I did songwriting and music business at Berkeley, I was very excited about starting things in the music business space. So I started something called Subramaniam Entertainment, where we brought together all our publishing, recording catalogs, contracts, et cetera, et cetera. And then my dad had always kind of had this idea floating around of a way to give back, like a music school where he could give back. And I used to give a couple of, workshops and sessions here and there. And it really was like a small little dream of his with, you know, 2, 3 students, 2, 3 teachers. And that was that. And then at some point he kind of asked me to step in and see how we could make something of it. So I feel like it was a good time for me because I was also trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I had a million ideas. When my daughter was born, I first thought that I would create, and we're talking about 2011, I would create a series of stuffed animals with, Hindu gods. And I still, to this date, own the domain babyhindu.com. And I wrote to Chinese suppliers and I did some sampling. And so, I mean, like, I'm a very all over the place kind of person. So focus helps. And when I got into SaPa and I started feeling the vision for what it could be, yeah, it became a really, really important part of my life, and has been for the last, decade and a half.
Is it true that you founded Baby SaPa because of your daughter?
When she was tiny, it was a good time for me to reflect back on my music experience. And I feel like my brother was the naughtiest student ever. And I was a diligent one. And my other brother was even more diligent than me. So I was like, between the three of us, there has to be something that kind of works, right? And for many people that I've met across the board, especially South Indians, they went for music classes as a kid or dance classes, and their parents forced them, and they hated it because the auntie was too strict, or they didn't get it, or I wasn't allowed to play, or something. And then they come back to it as adults and they're like, I wish I had stuck with it. I wish this is something that my kids had access to, and stuff like that. And then I realized that the music has always been great. It's the methodology which needs to get better. In my own case, I had such a delightful music teacher when I was in middle school, and I loved her as a person, but the experience of learning music was hard because we'd finish school, then we'd end up, in uniform in our music teacher's house, sitting on the floor with the mats that, the little bamboo mats. We've been poking our legs and the mosquitoes would be biting us, and we'd be tired, and one of my brothers would be fidgeting, and then the teacher would ask us to be quiet and sit still. And then the books that we had were these like cyclo-style Xerox books where if you put your finger on it, the ink would come off, and then they were all spiral bound, and it was this plastic thing that would poke, and like, just by the time the tambura's on and you're singing sa, you're done.
You're already distracted with
So how do we make this better? So that sort of became this obsessive passion for me, and I wanted a book that would make kids love music, right? And I don't know anything about design at this point. So I'm taking sheets of paper and I'm sketching things, and I'm like going to Shutterstock to look for illustrations. And then I called a friend of mine saying, hey, I thought you were going to learn how to do this. How about we figure out how to do this? And someone got, like, I think a cracked version of Corel Draw. And then we started notating things, and we're recording stuff at home. And I'm trying to figure out like how big the book needs to be because it needs to fit in a child's bag, and how thick the paper needs to be because if it's too thick, the book won't open. If it's too thin, the paper will tear. And so this sort of became this rabbit hole that I went.
Such minute details, huh?
And I feel that that's really important when you're an entrepreneur, right? You need to kind of look at all the things, which is why, I mean, I'm going a little off topic here, but it's so concerning when someone says, I have a great idea, all I need is a co-founder. Because I feel like there's something to be said about getting your hands dirty and knowing every step of the process.
Absolutely. And you've also designed a curriculum for infants and toddlers. So Can you take us through that process? What's it like? And
Our idea is not necessarily to create or make every child into a musician, but if we're creating the next generation of musicians and the next generation of babies who love music, let's let's do that, right? So we started by having our the tamburas. We would put them inside stuffed animals, and so when you'd switch it on, you'd see like this red light on the heart of the stuffed animal, and you'd sit it on your lap and you'd play. And the whole idea there was because I felt upset when people would say, if you come from a musical family, you have music in your blood. If you don't come from a musical family, it's very hard. And there's a whole part of this nature nurture thing going on. And one thing that we realized is a lot of it is not knowing, right? How do you give your child that environment if you don't come from a background where music is taught? It's hard. So we started putting in notes to parents at the beginning. We started realizing that a lot of kids who struggle with pitch matching, it's because parents at that time didn't realize the value of investing in a shruti box, which could be like 2, 3, 4,000 rupees. Let me see if my child is interested in music and then I'll buy it. But what happens is if you're not hearing it, it becomes harder for you to match pitch, right? And if your parents aren't able to hear that you aren't matching pitch, then it goes from there, right? And then right at that point, musicality or amusicality is established. So how do we make it really easy for parents who want to give their kids exposure to bring them into this? So we answered the questions, we gave them the toys, we had the audio recordings, we had, and it was CDs in those days. And then I was like, okay, this is the coolest thing that has ever been made. Clearly, everybody's going to realize that, they must have this in their home. And I went to the book publisher and I said, I want like 10 copies. And he's like, you need to make at least 500 copies, which was terrifying for me at that point. So I took a loan from my dad to get the 500 books printed. And then we had to get the CDs printed separately. And then I had to manually put the CDs into the case, into the book. And then I was like, okay, how do we distribute this? And then I spent like the next 18 months looking for book distributors online, Flipkart, Baby Oi, everybody, Crossword, Landmark. I was just so convinced that this was necessary that I was okay with hearing no 5 times a day. And then slowly, people started seeing the value of it. And I think in the middle of all of that, the SaPa Baby program and the SaPa in Schools program were sort of organically born. Because it's very tactile also, right? Which is why, like, in our training methodology, you should never ask a kid to sit still and behave, right? Because if they're feeling like expressing something through their body, that's a good thing, right? If the child wants to take the instrument, if the child wants to sing along, if the child even wants to lie down and experience it, that's fine, right? And we've also seen a lot of case studies and personal anecdotal examples about how music helps all kids, right? You look at your neurotypical children, you look at neurodivergent children, you look at cases of children with ADHD being able to hyperfocus with music, you look at cases of children with autism being able to socialize better with music. So, it's there. And even if you look at the new national education policy, the 2021, where they're talking about, the gap that gets created pre-first standard, those 3 to 6. Music is such a powerful tool.
Absolutely.
In the pre-kindergarten, in the kindergarten, in the Montessori, in the pre-primary years, because it's something that is largely democratized, right? You don't necessarily need a computer or something fancy, which is what we tend to think of, right? Like what are we giving access to? We need to give kids access to technology. We need to do this. We need to look at the IITs having more seats for everybody. But really what you need to do is also start looking at the grassroots level of how do we stimulate and engage 3-year-olds who are sitting in Anganwadis, right? So it's a big place.
I also remember in COVID, the kids and me used to sing a lot, especially Sleeping Child and Michael Jackson's Heal the World that you also, I really loved you writing the song Seven based on those lines. And they would make water bottles as mics and
Oh, I love it. I love it.
So what was it like on stage touring and for your performances to be received so warmly? What was the feeling like? And also I know that your song was mentioned at the Billboard World Song Contest. That must have been really a different feeling, right? So
This is an interesting one because when you think about not taking internet trolls seriously,
Yeah.
the flip side of that is not taking praise too seriously
Uh-huh.
also. So what I think is really important is to separate yourself from your art. So if a song does well and it's recognized, it's a really nice feeling.
Mm.
But if a song doesn't do well, that should also be an okay feeling. So
Yeah.
I think as a teenager, I used to internalize things a lot, right? It used to be like me, I'm putting myself out there and this is so vulnerable. What if people don't like me? And of course I got trolled, right? Like when I won this the Billboard award and a couple of other awards for songwriting,
Yeah.
and I was pretty excited about it. And I remember reading an article online by one of these major news portals, just slamming me based on how I look. And it had nothing to do with my music at all. And I was like, I was feeling young and vulnerable, and my life was over. And I'm like, they don't even know me. Why don't they like me? Why doesn't everybody like me? And then you get over it,
Yeah.
right? So like I think it's more now about doing something that feels good,
Yeah.
being honest,
Absolutely.
having fun, going out on stage with people that you
Yeah.
like. Like, I really choose to perform only with people that I like,
Yeah.
which is such a luxury, right?
Absolutely.
It's such a luxury to wake up and say, and even in SaPa, I get to work with people that I like, right? So I think it's kind of moving past that. How does it feel when good things happen or when bad things happen? But to choose to be in every moment and do your best. And I mean, some audiences are great and some audiences are very easy to connect with, and you feel such warmth and it's so inspiring, and you do things that you never thought that you would do, and you have these meaningful interactions. And sometimes audiences take a longer time to warm up, right? You'll have audiences, especially when you go in for a show where the context is not the performance, right? Where the performance is part of a larger something else, then it takes effort to warm up and do that. So
Right.
again, that's not something that you take personally. That's something that you just used to learn from and adapt as a
Yeah.
performer.
Yeah. I'm sure it takes a lot. And does playing in different locations impact your performance?
Absolutely. And I think for me, that's especially so because I feel like part of my show is also comedy, right? Like it's engaging with the audience, it's cracking a few jokes, it's getting comfortable in the space, it's understanding what's going on. And so I really enjoy knowing the context of where I'm performing because that really informs how the evening is going to go for me. And I think that in some sense makes it more enjoyable for the audience also, right? It's not that I'm getting off of a plane with my eyes closed and I'm being here, and I will do exactly the same thing that I would do somewhere else in the world. So like when we were performing in Russia, it really struck me that everything that I was saying was being translated into Russian by the interpreter. But then once I started singing, I started with like a Sanskrit shloka. They didn't have to translate that, right? Which is kind of a profound thing because obviously this is also not a language that they understand. I'm not singing in Russian, but at some point the translation becomes unnecessary. Or if you're performing in a club like B flat used to be or Humming Tree or something, you have an audience that's very much there listening to what you're saying and talking, and then being witty and being a little self-effacing is great in that environment.
And in what ways do you think the music scene, because you've traveled and performed in many different countries, so what ways do you think the music scene is different in India when compared to US or the other places that you've been?
I think one great thing about India is that it is so open-minded when it comes to styles of music. I mean, of course, you have regional favorites in different
Yeah.
places, but if you come to a city like Bangalore, in the same venue, you can have back-to-back nights of, say, 70s rock music followed by Rajasthani folk, and then the next day you can have a Carnatic concert, and you will have an audience that shows up. So, I mean, this kind of open-mindedness and the fact that there is an audience that just loves music that will show up for all of these things, right? It's not always these very segmented hardcore audiences. So I think that's great about Bangalore and India in general.
Yeah.
Also, maybe in India, it is a little, and this might be controversial, a little easier for artists to survive as artists because you can teach, you can do concerts, you can do corporate gigs, and you can live. Whereas sometimes in the US and places like that, it is such a grind. Like, because you're driving everywhere by yourself, you're, filling petrol in your car, you're going 2 hours for the rehearsal, you're coming back, you've got a day job, you've got this. And so, I mean, I feel that unless you really break through, it is a struggle in places like that. I wish that there was more sort of cultural support in different countries where at least it's easier for artists to live as artists and not choose to do different things. I know that Ireland is potentially trying to bring something like that, and that could be cool.
Also, it's not easy to get where you are just now. So there must have been some real challenges that you've had to face. I'm wondering if you feel that was all worth it. And, I mean, knowing that you've had success, what did it really take?
I actually had a conversation along these lines with Ambi a couple of weeks ago, where I was like, we don't really take enough time to enjoy the good stuff or like celebrate. I think both of us are kind of that mindset where we're like, do something, get it done, move on to the next thing, right? So now
If us have become that way.
we've become that way, right? And if we don't do something well, then we're hard on ourselves. But if we do something well, that's it. Just finish, move on. What's the next thing? So we're always looking at what is the next thing? How do we do the next big thing? Like, there's still so much more to do. There's so much further to go. And I was like, if we were to talk to those kids who in 2014 were really excited about teaching music to 1,000 kids and tell them, hey, we're teaching 50,000 kids now. We've impacted national education policy. We've got higher education in music. We've got partnerships with a global conservatory. Indian classical music is being recognized by the UK Education Board as an examination subject with MTB. Those kids would be really excited. So maybe we should take a minute and celebrate. And he's like, you want a cake? So I think there are always struggles, right? And you get out of bed. And the thing that really used to make me very upset was being dismissed for being young and being a woman.
Yeah.
And I sort of had a chip on my shoulder about that. And I've also had so many people tell me no in the nicest way possible because they think that I'm fragile or feminine or nice, and nice equals stupid. But yeah, it is worth it. I mean, I know so many times I would like get up and this is privilege, of course, being able to fly everywhere. But like get up at 3:30 in the morning, take a 5:30 flight to Delhi, do 6 meetings, take an 11:30 flight and come back, reach home at 2 o'clock because you have to wake your kid up for school in the morning and be there for school drop. And if you're not there for breakfast, Amma, what kind of parent are you? So it is worth it. It is worth it, both being there to watch your child grow up and, being fulfilled. And part of being fulfilled is being exhausted. And that's the reality of it,
Yeah, I know what you're saying exactly.
Yeah.
So, what would you say to this? You set your own expectations and what you want to achieve, what you wanted to achieve, or were there other people who were proactively setting expectations for you through your journey, musical journey?
I've called myself really an accidental entrepreneur, to be honest. Like, I feel like I was a very curious person. I have what I call degree disease. I have 8 different degrees and diplomas because I just get excited about things and I want to learn them and I want to learn more and I want to go to the root of it. And I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I finished an additional certification in coaching neurodivergence, and that's always been my mindset. Like, oh, I want to know a little bit about psychology, or I want to study music education, or I want to study law. I want to understand business. How do I read a balance sheet? How do I make projections? And so that has always been a very varied, like, can I be a Lego grandmaster? I'm obsessed. I have a whole room full of Lego in my house, right? And now I'm like, what if I could do Lego play therapy for music? So I mean, so that's the backdrop, right? So it is very organic and it's very accidental, and sometimes it's disastrous, and sometimes like a book or an album comes out of it, and sometimes I've exploded my kitchen, and then I come back home and my 14-year-old has a blowtorch because she, like me, is making creme brulee from scratch, but she would have forgotten to eat lunch. So it is in that sense very accidental. But now I'm trying to be a little more mindful about setting goals that are visible for the people that I work with, right? So if you're a one woman army, it's okay to kind of be doing this thing. But when you're working with either your brother in a team, or if you have, an incredible group of people like I do at SaPa. We've got this large team of people who are working. Then we need to kind of be on the same page. Then we need to set goals, and then we need to look at our vision, and we need to decide where we're allocating resources. And that's also like an exciting sort of use of both sides of the brain, I think.
Yeah. Nice. And how would you describe your musical style? Also, tell us some of the songs that are special to you and why.
I'm always on the hunt for music that I like. I would say that my listening style is eclectic. Sometimes it's so mainstream that, like I could be listening to Taylor Swift nonstop for weeks and my child will be embarrassed. Or, another band that I've always loved is Green Day. I like, the way Adam Levine songwrites. But I've also spent months and years listening to Ella Fitzgerald and Emma Subbulakshmi and Eminem and, so Linkin Park and, Chemba is in there. And then there's Kishori Amonkar that I need to listen to. And then the way that Lata Di sang that song and then Asha Bhosle's attitude here. And so, I mean, it's all there, right? And then, look who my dad collaborated with in the 1970s. So I think my musical tastes are sort of like the explosion in the back of my mind with everything else. I would say that my own musical style is just honest and authentic. I think in English, so a lot of the time I sing in English. I'm a very simple person. I'm not super complicated. So the words that I use tend to be words that any 10 or 12-year-old could understand. Hopefully the songs have meaning which reveal themselves to you the more that you listen to them. But I feel like there's a lot of magic that can come from simple layering, right? Or if you interact with a person and they have a perspective, and that perspective can come into your music in a nice way, right? You meet an African drummer and you're like, oh, what is he doing there? That's really nice. Or you think about the back and forth of a conversation, or the rhythm of whatever life. So I feel like my music is a representation of all of that. If I had to find a bin to put it in an old CD store, it would probably be contemporary world music from India in English.
And do they all convey a message too when you write them?
To me, they do. Maybe they don't to other people. Like, to me, Stargazer, for example, was a song that I wrote as a survivor's lullaby, right? Because we talk so much about Me Too, and we talk about, sexual harassment. We talk about violation. We talk about what children go through, what women go through. And I wrote a song called Stargazer, right? Where it's like, there's this innocence and this looking up at, but you don't need to know the background of that story, right? I mean, another song that I wrote was called When It's Dark, and it sort of deals with my own relationship with spirituality and religion. And, I feel like how many of us have this sort of pendulum as our relationship with the divine, where, if you're brought up to be devout, then you swing to absolutely the other end and you're like, either, God, I don't know what you're doing with me, or you have no business being here, you don't even exist. And then you come back somewhere to the middle, and then you have a child, so you kind of come back a little more, and then something bad happens, and then you go there. And so it's this kind of relationship that goes on. So I think When It's Dark is sort of about that. Superstar, like I said, was sort of my coming to terms with what people perceive as fame, or what is expected of you, and this whole idea of being objectified. So to me, a lot of my songs have meaning, but I don't think that they need to have the same meaning to an audience. And when I work with my young songwriters and we analyze songs by, great singers and songwriters, what does this mean to you? And what do you think they were saying? And it doesn't always have to be the same thing.
Sure. What would you say has been your luckiest break so far?
I think my life has been a series of lucky breaks.
Okay.
I mean, I joined law college and then I decided that I didn't want to be a lawyer. That was a lucky break. I did a master's of songwriting and music business at Berkeley, and that opened my mind, and that was a very lucky break. And then I got divorced when my child was 6 months old, and that was a very lucky break because it put me on a very different path of my life. And then I started SaPa in schools, and nothing went the way that it was supposed to. And that was a very lucky break, right? And then I ended up writing a column for the New Indian Express by accident. And that was really a lucky break, because then I could just kind of talk about anything music related that was on the top of my head. I get invited to do TEDx's and those kind of speeches, and then I get to talk about how I'm a work in progress, and that's a lucky break. And recently, for the first time in my life, I got called as a model for Jaipur's Diwali campaign, and that's something that came out of nowhere. So I feel like life is a set of lucky breaks, and you just kind of sometimes have to look back. You have to say yes, and you have to look back and figure out how it was a lucky break sometimes.
Yeah. And is there anything that is fueling your writing lately? Do you think, are there any past events or incidents that altered the way you wrote songs over the past years?
Well, I think when you're a teenager, you're very angsty, and love is the center of everything, and there's just so much rage, right? And I love seeing that phase with my songwriting students and with my daughter, and it's beautiful to watch songwriters being born, right? And then how they evolve. So I mean, I went through that. I'm not there anymore, and now I feel like I'm writing on bigger picture things, and and maybe I'm more boring because I'm like, let the world be happy, say good things. I'm not feeling like burning anything down anymore.
Did you ever start off writing jingles or something?
We have actually, Imbi and I and Mahesh, of course, have done a few jingles and corporate anthems and songs and things like that, which have been fun, and again, something I like working on with my songwriters, because it's interesting to write for a very specific audience with a little bit of your voice, but really their own direction. And I think that that's fun because you have to convey a message in a very short period of time.
Yeah. Anything that stands out for you?
Oh, mostly, I think they've been commissioned. So, I mean, there's nothing particularly that stands out, but I will tell you one funny instance of a company that we worked with for a long time to get, and I'm happy with the end product. It's a really nice song, and it was like they made a video to kind of talk about their journey, and everything was approved, and we've done the whole recording, and we're about to shoot the video, and then they're like, "Oh, we need to change the title of the song." Because we realized that we have and the title is also the chorus, which is like the word that comes all the time, because we realized that, we have a competitor with that name, or some version of that name. We're like, that's cool.
So that could have been funny. So, I know that the entertainment industry is particularly very judgmental, and you mentioned just now that you were sort of there was something that was written about. So, how did you cope with that environment? I mean,
I think it comes down to being grounded and having a family that keeps you grounded,
Mhm.
and not taking yourself seriously. It's really that you are not your art,
Yeah.
right? And people are allowed to have opinions because you're putting yourself out there. You're putting yourself in the public sphere. How much they're allowed to comment is always something that's debated, right? And that's not in my hands. What is in my hands is how I can show up, how I can choose to be professional, and how I can choose to share my art. So, and I think it's also important to realize where you draw those lines, especially with social media, right? How much of your personal life are you putting in? If you have children, maybe you don't want people knowing what school they're in, or what, gymnastics class they go to, or things like that, because you want to protect them and protect their
Right.
so I think it's really about realizing that this is part of the job. Having a public presence is very much a part of your job. It is not you, right? And the conversation that I have with you on camera might be very authentic, and it is, right? Because this is still very much me. But if someone has something to say about this conversation, that doesn't necessarily mean that I need to take it personally.
Yeah. And also, do you think that it comes with age too? That you really don't care about.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Because I mean, this whole spotlight syndrome and stuff that all young people have, they're all worried about fitting in, and what people say about them, and it hurts, right?
Yeah,
And
it does. I was
this
just
whole
going to say that.
recently discovered that RSD is a real thing, and it's not just me, rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And some of us really, really feel
Yeah.
rejection strongly. So you have to kind of distance yourself from that.
True. Also, can you point out any difficult period in your life when music really helped you heal?
I would say music has always been helping me heal. It's kind of been the soundtrack of my life in so many different ways. And there's always been like a song that I would hold on to during a difficult phase. When my mother died, there was a song that I used to listen to a lot. It was a Michael Jackson song. I can't remember which one. And when my daughter was young, there was a certain music that I used to listen to. There was an album of my dad's called Tranquility that I used to listen to on repeat when she was a baby. She used to love the Tchaikovsky piano concerto, and that used to be like her, favorite thing in the world. I always have some music that's very important to me, that's sort of pushing things along. And I mean, when you read and you see the science, there's this whole idea of the ISO principle, right? That helps you influence your mood. So if you're in a very sad space and you're listening to sad music and you slowly transition that sad music to happier music, then that impacts your mood in a positive way. So
Yes, I've noticed that, and it's quite strange that but it has an impact.
Yeah.
Right. So is there a difference for you, between words, poetry, and song lyrics?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think words, like prose, is very forgiving because you can put everything out there, right? Like, and you can be very careless or generous with words, which you cannot in songs.
Yeah.
Because in the average song, you've got what, 2.5 minutes to get your point across.
Sure.
And in that, you're repeating the chorus 2 or 3 times. You've maybe got an instrumental bridge. You've got this, and so then the importance of every section is clear, right? What is the verse doing? The verse is driving your story along. Your chorus is spotlighting it. Your bridge is giving you a different perspective. Your chorus is coming back. So that flow is really important. Every section of a song has a purpose, and so when you're envisioning a song, sometimes you even start with the story engine, right? Like, what is the story that I want to tell here? Whereas with the poem, you're using some of the elements of rhyme and meter, and you get to play with how it feels. A longer line feels a little slower, and then a faster line feels more hurried, and there's more intent in that. But you can still flow the way that you want to. So yes, I think that all three are very different ways of writing.
Yeah. And you explain it so beautifully, actually. So do you write every day? And were there moments of self-discovery while you were writing while you were writing your music and composing your music?
So I think one thing that's fun to write every day is what is known as object writing, where you take a word or an object, really, and you write about it from the perspective of all senses. And if you do that in the morning and you kind of see where that story takes you, and it's a timed write, 5 or 10 minutes, then in a way I feel like you're unlocking your creativity for the rest of the day. A lot of the times you don't realize that you have something that you need to get out, right? Like with your journaling, and you can, maybe be talking about a lamp that is in front of you, a very simple looking earthen lamp, and that might unlock some, past memory you had with a grandparent, or, loss or longing. And so much of it comes from that. So I think if you're just willing to write, and even write badly every day, then you're kind of opening yourself up to what is deep inside, and what the universe wants you to have.
Yeah. Nice, very nice. And has your relationship with music changed over the years, do you think?
Maybe my relationship with music has been constant. It's been an important presence in my life, and some days and some weeks I spend more time with it and less time with it, but it's very much always been a part of my existence.
Can you live without it?
I don't think so. I mean, like, there's always
Like
some
a second nature to you, right?
there's always some tune running in my, and I feel like most of us can't live without music, right? You don't have to be a musician to kind of.
I agree.
Everyone has a song that's running in their head. Everyone has a favorite song. Everyone has a song soundtrack that runs in their mind. Everyone has some nostalgic memory related to music. So
Yeah. And what about the rise of digital music technologies? So has that changed how you personally think about music, how you compose music?
I think it's amazing, honestly. And I think that the opportunities that it presents are endless and exciting. And I feel like technology always causes some fear.
Yeah.
But if you're at the forefront of something and you can understand how to embrace it, you can just figure out how to make things better, right? I mean, I don't think there's any need to feel like you're under attack as a creative. I mean, at least as a musician, because if you're, say, a songwriter, or maybe like these digital loops that you can find, can give you a new idea. I mean, I remember my students used to play with random chord generators, which will just give you an idea of what you can write. Or if you're fooling around with AI, you can be like, hey, this is a song that I wrote, or these are my lyrics. Write a sad version of it. You don't have to use it, right? But anything that creates, new and unique ideas or are fun or help you explore things in a different way is all good. And I mean, if we can figure out how to move in the right direction, where we're no longer using the phonograph where, you had to sing into the cone to be recorded. We're using digital technologies. We can collaborate across time and space. We can do things new. We can layer voices. You can take one person and make them an entire orchestra. All of this is exciting. I mean, and you have to figure out how to add creativity into it or how to use it creatively. It's not about replacing all the creatives.
Which is a worry now.
Yeah.
Leonardo da Vinci once said that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. So why do you think it's harder to write simple songs now? Like how Kishore Kumar times and,
Simple lays everything bare, right? When things are very simple, you can't hide, right? You can't hide behind 100 layers of things, or you can't. So simple is hard because whatever is there has to be really perfect.
I need to hide, right? And the question would be also, what advice would you give to another songwriter looking to improve their craft?
Oh, just show up every day. Really, just show up every day and be okay with being bad. That, your first song will not be perfect. Your first attempt will not be perfect. I remember a songwriting professor of mine saying the secret to the one perfect song, write 1,000 bad ones. I think that's what it is.
And also, can you talk to us a little bit about your Tayu Sadam project and your upcoming future? I love the name, by the way.
I mean, I like the name too because the whole idea is how Tayu Sadam is, when you think of food, comfort food is like home.
Yeah.
When you need comfort, you eat your Tayu Sadam. So we wanted to make music that was like that, right? Comfort music that resonates with people and makes them feel warm inside. And it's been something that Ambi, Mahesh, Akshay, and I have been doing since 2018, and it's a space for us to have fun and bring together different ideas. And I mean, this is a great example of me working with people that I really like. I mean, these are the same people that you could, spend an evening on the couch with and crack a whole bunch of jokes, and you'll also come out with a couple of songs at the end of it. So the Aishadan project has been a great way for us to sort of experiment with Carnatic and English and pop and experimental and electronic and all of that. And the other project, which is Ambi and I, is Subramania, which is sort of, again, a nice place where we look at world influences, a lot more acoustic stuff.
And anything exciting coming up that we should know about?
Always new things. I mean, there's always new music, new albums in the works. I'm excited that I'm working with the artist illustrator Alicia Souza on a new project that'll hopefully be out soon. I'm working on writing my dad's biography, which will be out soon, and a few more things that keep us busy and keep us excited. We've just launched a set of exams called the SaPa MTB exams, which are the first Carnatic music exams to be recognized by a UK music education board, which, puts it on par with, Western classical music or contemporary music or any other style of music. So a child who does like a grade 2 in Carnatic violin is on par with a child who's done Western classical piano. And I think that's very exciting too.
All the best. And so happy I've had this chat with you. I've learned so much. Thank you very
It's a
much.
joy talking to you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
As our conversation with Bindu Subramaniam draws to a close, one truth resonates louder than any note. Music is not just sound, it's transformation. From law to lyrics, from SaPa classrooms to global stages, Bindu's journey reminds us that creativity and discipline, tradition and innovation can coexist in perfect harmony. Thank you for tuning in to the Expression Podcast. Until next time, keep learning, keep creating, and keep expressing the art that's uniquely yours.